Seems like we all disagree about more things than we did a few decades ago, doesn't it? Feels like we disagree about some really fundamental things that used to be unanimous, and all of that creates a potential for division. Unless you profit off a division, you probably don't like it any more than I do. So what do? Before we jump into that conversation, let me just take a moment to say I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Journey at Home. My name is Jarrod, and I'm glad you're joining us. We're here because we find that following Jesus in our everyday lives makes everyday life better. And since we're all looking to make life better, more meaningful, more full, then hey, better begins right here. So stick around and explore with us what that looks like. Hey, subscribe to this channel, tap the bell to get notifications. Hey, and let us know how we can help. For today, we hope to help you think about how to address this tension we all feel that we just disagree more often with more people. So it's a pervasive thing in everything we do. Think about it. Some of you think the end of the toilet paper should be on the underside. However, if you're really smart, you know that the end should be on the top side. Okay, that was an easy one, but what about this one? Coke or Pepsi? Coca-Cola people, am I right? Or beach people versus mountains people? What about LeBron or MJ? Okay, all right, we'll let the Kobe people in on this one as well, but I can't believe I'm going to say this one. This one causes so many arguments. Is it Apple or Android? I know, not a good one to bring up. Let me just say this before I go any further. If you're an under Pepsi, Mountain, LeBron, Apple person, I'm not sure I'd feel too comfortable having any shared space with you right now, okay? Well, obviously I'm exaggerating, but what about some more serious topics we disagree about, like vaccination or not, abortion, value of family? What does virtuous behavior look like? What is male and what is female? What are the rights of children? And some of these topics really got your attention. So before I lose you to arguments you're making in your head or remembering actual arguments you've had with people over these issues, let me point out your attention to something at the center of this controversy. Disagreements are not new. What seems to have crept into our disagreements and division, though, is fear. And fear is always detrimental to friendships. It's all connected to what we've been talking about the past two parts of this series called Losing Connection. Recent research is confirming what we all feel. Americans are experiencing historically high levels of feeling isolated, invisible, and insignificant. We're spending 20% more time alone than 50 years ago. Even the younger generations are decreasing the amount of time they spend with friends face to face, and that has dropped by 70% over the past 20 years. So less friends means less friends who show up when life gets tough, and less people who encourage you to keep going on the good things that are sometimes hard. And we feel less responsible to help other people carry their load when they need it most. And without those meaningful connections, life ends up in chaos. But God designed us to be at our best when we have a community of healthy relationships. But fear is making it harder and harder to develop those. It's just easier to cancel someone you disagree with than to ask questions and have a conversation. It's so much easier to surround ourselves with people who see the world exactly like we do and isolate ourselves from anyone who views things differently. We end up following people online or watching TV channels that we agree with, and we unfollow and thumbs down anyone we disagree with. But there's a danger to living in that kind of curated world. It feels safe. It feels like a better way to live. But the problem is that it fuels the unwarranted fear we have of people who see the world differently. Listen carefully right now, because I want to challenge us all, have a few friendships that disrupt or challenge us. But first, I want to give a disclaimer. I'm not suggesting today that you allow abusive people to stay close to you. That's not ever healthy. If you're experiencing any kind of physical abuse or feel the consistent fear of being abused, please reach out for help and create some healthy boundaries with those people. However, the challenge I'm talking about is the fact that many of us have distanced ourselves, unfriended or unfollowed people who were once close friends or even just good friends, but we disagreed with them about something political or in the community or some cultural issue. And is that healthy? Think about it this way. How many friendships do you have that would be completely ineffective if you found out they voted for the candidate of the other party? In other words, if they told you they supported someone you disagreed with, would it impact your view of them and their sanity? Would you start to feel like you should create some distance and question your friendship with them? I know for some of you, this is really hitting home because you've been through that. But I'm not sure that this is the healthiest thing for you because nothing promotes personal growth like a good friend who also contradicts us. And for many of us, we've wiped our lives clear of those kinds of contradictions. And so, why are we so quick to cancel friendships over different viewpoints? Is it a they problem, or is it something inside of us that's the problem? Are we so insecure that we can't listen to any point of view that still love the other person who's different from us? Anytime we dismiss a person who threatens our point of view, we lose. And sometimes we leave a friendship over something that we won't even feel that strongly about 10 years from now. How many times have your personal views changed over time? You know why your views have changed over time? It's because all your beliefs and all my beliefs aren't actual beliefs. I think it's helpful to think about the three categories of belief. I mean, there are facts. These things are true and real, and there are certainly things like that in the world. And then there are opinions. And part of the problem may be that we often confuse our opinions for facts. There are some things that you're just sure are facts that are really just opinions. And when you run into a new experience or some new compelling information, your opinion changes. But right now, you're treating that opinion as if it's a fact that will always be true. And it's helpful to not confuse those two. And then here's one more category. It's your feelings, your gut reactions, or your emotions you have about a topic. You haven't spent much time thinking about it, but your gut gives you a strong way to feel about that thing. And all of us carry around all three of these. But when opinions and facts and feelings get confused, it's really easy to damage our friendships. And even if we feel like we've won the argument, ultimately we end up losing. So the Apostle Paul dealt with some similar situations. He was actually writing a letter that we call Colossians to a group of churches that were filled with people who were having trouble getting along. So here's what he told them that I think can help all of us. Here, there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. I mean, that's a pretty impressive list of diversity in that church, right? Imagine how many different value systems and viewpoints and opinions there were represented in that group. This is a pretty tall order for us today, but think about what Paul was asking of this early church where no one believed in equal rights. There were no laws protecting free speech or equality. You had slave masters sitting in a church meeting next to their slaves. And a Jew and a Gentile, who before this day would never have eaten at the same table because of dietary laws and disagreements over what was clean and unclean. For a woman to be treated with the same dignity and respect as a man in front of a community assembly. Listen, this is all very real to that time and place. But Paul claims something that is important for us to consider. He says, different is healthier when Jesus is at the center. In other words, Paul says, keep the main thing the main thing. What matters is Jesus and his sacrificial death and his miraculous resurrection. Jesus is what unites us. Jesus equalizes us. He validates us. He's what we rally around. Nothing else should divide us if we follow Jesus. Our friendships shouldn't be centered on lesser feelings or opinions or agreements. When Jesus is the center, he informs how we treat one another when we disagree. That's how different is healthier than when Jesus is at the center. And then Paul goes on in the next verse to say this, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Jesus unifies us more than any topic divides us. So when we disagree, we should show a little compassion, extend some kindness, demonstrate humility, and then try to learn from that other person. Give a little gentleness when you disagree on something and explain your side of the issue. Be patient when they still disagree with you, despite your well thought out arguments. And then in addition, Paul says one more thing. He says, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Listen, we've all made mistakes and need forgiveness, right? Do for them what others have done for you. When you and your friend disagree and they overreact, they treat their opinion like a fact, and your response is to forgive them then. Paul goes on to describe this kind of friendship. And over all of these virtues, compassion, kindness, gentleness, all those virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. So on top of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, there's love. Love them enough to move beyond the disagreement. Love them enough to sacrifice for them. The healthiest friendships submit to a mutual sacrificing for the other, sacrificing opinions and preferences and even comforts, because that kind of love creates unity between people. With that kind of love as the foundation, you can have an honest, uncomfortable conversation because you know that your mutual love for each other won't let either of you walk away. You can say something hard and trust that the other person knows you love them and you've got their best interest in mind. It's these kinds of behaviors that will keep you from feeling isolated, invisible, and insignificant. So let's make this practical for all of us right now. What are some things we can do that will help us build and maintain these kinds of diverse, healthy friendships that help us grow? So first, we need to be clear. Let's be clear about what matters most. If you're a follower of Jesus, it's Him, not a political issue or personal opinion. We are all created in God's image, as we talked about in the first part of the series. So you don't get to cancel one of God's kids, okay? Secondly, let's be curious. Stop challenging people's point of view or shutting them down when they disagree with you. Instead, ask. Ask a question. What makes you say that? Why do you believe that? How do you arrive at that opinion? Tell me more about that. Be a student before you become a critic. Just being curious creates a connection. And then third, be cautious. I don't mean be cautious of other people's opinions or the different ideas they have. I mean, be cautious of your own certainty on some issues. Because our feelings and our opinions create emotions that cloud our judgment at times. The truth might be right in front of you and you miss it, so be cautious about being closed-minded. Good, healthy, meaningful friendships seem to be rare in the world right now, but I don't know about you. I want to live in a world where we're able to have satisfying, supportive friends who challenge us to grow, not living inside of a curated echo chamber, only hearing what I want to hear. We were created for community, and that community brings diversity. And if everybody is just like you, then you don't benefit from them, and they don't benefit from you. If we're going to avoid the growing feeling of isolated, invisible, and insignificant, if we're going to help our communities thrive and be all God created us to be, then we'll need to kind of relationships that embolden us during a crisis. The kind that aren't just convenient or easy that end up creating all kinds of chaos eventually. Jesus died and rose again, yes, to give us a new life and create a way for us to connect with our Heavenly Father, but He never intended for our individual faith to stay isolated. Jesus spent 3 years gathering people around Him, and He launched a movement of people of the most diverse community of people on the planet. We call it the church. And Jesus was very clear about this. The church is a group of people connected so people can flourish and thrive by modeling the way to get along, to support and love each other, even when we disagree. That is a compelling vision of friendship that I can get behind. And I hope it is for you as well.